Hey there, in this video I'm going to install a new chain and cassette which is going to replace this worn out Shimano chain and SRAM cassette with a new KMC chain and a Sunrace cassette. I'm going to be installing these new parts on our tandem bike. If you'd like to see some tandem bike related content, check out my other channel, Tandem Adventurers. Okay, back to the installation. You should always check your chain for wear, because if you replace your chain at the correct time before it gets too worn, it's very possible that you can replace the chain without having to replace the cassette. There are a couple of different ways that you can measure the chain wear. The easiest way is with a chain wear gauge like this. This chain is obviously worn way past acceptable limits. If I were to install the new chain on this used worn cassette, I can almost be guaranteed that I would run into issues with the new chain skipping and popping in high load conditions, such as accelerating from a stop or trying to climb hills. So the first thing I'm going to do here to get started is relieve all the tension on the chain by shifting the bike into the smallest rear sprocket and also the smallest front sprocket. Next, I'm going to just grab a chain tool to press pin out. This chain does not have a quick disconnect link on it. Now that I have a link pressed out, I can pull the chain apart. Next up, I'm just going to pull the chain off from the back of the bike like so. With the old chain removed, this is a good time to install the new cassette onto the wheel before installing the new chain. Next up, I'm going to remove the quick release from the rear wheel. Obviously, if you have a bike with a through axle, this step is not necessary. And now we're ready to remove the old cassette. To do that, we need a couple of additional tools. First off, we need a cassette tool. Shimano cassettes and many SRAM cassettes will require a cassette remover tool like this. Next up, you're going to need a chain whip tool. And the purpose of that is to hold the cassette in position, since we will be rotating this backward. Then you need a wrench. I'm just using a plain adjustable wrench here. I'm going to hold the chain whip and just loosen the lock ring on the cassette like so. Pull that off. Move the cassette to the chain whip. And now your first couple of cogs, depending on the cassette, it could be 2 or 3, they're going to come off as loose pieces. And then the remaining assembly just slides off like so. Now I'm going to install the new cassette basically in the reverse order of disassembly with the old one. Now this only goes on the hub here in one position. If you look closely at the splines, the spline teeth are all evenly spaced, except for one, which has a narrower width to it, and it's not evenly spaced. And there's a reason for that. That is to keep all your gears indexed in the correct position for the bike to shift the way it was designed. And you'll see there's a corresponding pattern. So line the new cassette up into the correct position, and it basically just slides on like that. Depending on the model of cassette you're using, you may have, again, 2 or 3 loose cogs. This one has the 2. Again, each one is designed to go on in only one position. Okay, so the new cassette is on. Now I'm just going to take the lock ring, and using the tool I can thread that on by hand to make it hand tight, and follow up by tightening it down with a wrench. And reinstall the skewer if applicable. And that's it for new cassette installation. Okay, so now I've got the wheel back on the bike with the new cassette installed. Let's install the new chain now. This chain happens to have a quick master link. Unlike the old one that I took off, it did not. This is a KMC 8-speed chain. This bike is a 8-speed drivetrain. Most new bike chains out of the package are 116 links long, as you can see on the package here. That's a longer length than what the bike is designed to work with, so the chain needs to be shortened or cut down to the proper length. There are a couple of ways to achieve the proper length of the chain. One of the best ways to do that is to run the chain over the largest cog on the rear wheel, and then around your front chain ring. If you have a bike with 2 or 3 chain rings like this one, make sure you run it around the largest front chain ring. Next, I'm going to pull the loose ends of the chain together like this and kind of see where they line up. You can see they overlap because of the length. And I'm going to look for the point where I can cut the chain. This would be too short here. The next point that I can cut it is here. But we did not run the chain through the rear derailleur yet. So I'm going to add 1 link to compensate for the extra bit of chain that would have to run through the derailleur. So I'm going to move this from here to here. Note when I say 1 link, that's 1 complete link, meaning an inner section and an outer section. That makes 1 link. Now I'm going to just grab my chain tool again and press out this piece here. So now I can go ahead and run the chain through the derailleurs. I'm going to take it off the large cog and drop it down to the small cog on the rear wheel. And I'm going to run it over the upper pulley on the derailleur, run it through the cage. Make sure the chain is going straight through the derailleur cage and not touching on any of the tabs in the cage. I'm going to run it around the outside and underneath of the lower pulley and just let that hang there for a second. Up front on the chainring end, I'm going to run the chain through the front derailleur if your bike is so equipped with one. And I'm just going to run it over the small chain ring in the front if it's so equipped. And lastly, I'm going to install the quick master link. One side goes on each end. Bring the ends together, pull it apart, and they're locked in place. And that completes the installation. Lastly, we just want to run through all the gears real quick, make sure they shift as they should. The rear derailleur may need a little bit of adjustment there. And that concludes the installation of a new chain and cassette on this bike. If you found that helpful, which I hope you did, please consider subscribing to this channel. And if you're interested in seeing some video content specifically about tandem biking, check out my other channel. I'll post the link below. Thanks for watching.